it is.
There it is. Look
Wow,
at this
look
stadium.
At this.
Amazing.
They did something. Wow.
Look at that infield, Rico. Have you ever in your life?
Man. Like a carpet.
I have to say one thing, though, is I remember I only got to play one game in 1966. It was the last game of the year here. And this place was half or one-third filled.
You could hear the vendors talking to each other. I mean, there was like 2,000 people here. But wow, did things change.
Boy, to think that we were a small part of making that happen, Rick, you know?
That's right.
I mean, by
Red
the
Sox
time we
Nation.
got through the summer of '67, there wasn't an empty seat in this place.
Brought fans back. Kids came to the ballpark and families.
And it's never changed since.
No,
it's
it
been
hasn't.
filled ever since
Ever
then.
since.
It really changed baseball
Yeah.
in New England and in Boston.
The 1-0 pitch, here it is.
Wonderful. Red Sox fans have longed to hear it. The Boston Red Sox are world champions.
The strange truth for a lot of us is that since that magical October of 2004, that wide swath of New England they call Red Sox Nation hasn't had a lot to complain about, at least in theory. The curse? It's just a distant memory, replaced by a whole new way to experience rooting for the Sox, expecting great things to happen.
The Red Sox are world champs again.
The Red Sox have won their third world championship in 10 years.
But 2004 isn't when everything changed. No, to understand how we got here, you have to go all the way back to an impossible dream. Dreamt 50 summers ago.
The simple fact, unalterable, indisputable, is that 1967 is the dividing line in Red Sox history. Period.
It's like in The Wizard of Oz when it goes from black and white to color.
67 was probably the most important year in the history of the franchise.
Let's go!
And that team captivated the whole region, all of New England. They were coming off a long run of mediocrity, and there are some questions about the sustainability of the franchise.
I used to hear it a lot in the 60s. Isn't it a shame that it was the Braves who went to Milwaukee, not the Red Sox?
That one is tagged. It is in the seats for a home run.
The Red Sox were what we had.
Uh-oh. It's now 10-1.
I used to walk down every Saturday to my aunt and uncle's house, and my Uncle Orrin would, drink beer and talk about how terrible the Red Sox were, and they were pretty terrible.
It's true. In the years leading up to 1967, the Red Sox were nothing more than forgettable. Having finished 8th, 9th, and 9th place in a 10-team American League the previous 3 seasons. And with not much to cheer about at Fenway, not a lot of people were showing up.
Fenway Park, to me, was 6,000 guys named Sully drinking beers. That's what Fenway Park, to me, seemed to be like.
I remember in 1966, playing with Kansas City, counting the fans in the stands. I was playing right field, and I was looking, you could count them. I mean, nobody.
We were used to small crowds. Friday night or Saturday or Sunday, you're lucky you had 5,000 people, 7,000 people in the stands. People came out to see you as an individual perform, not as a team. And that made it very difficult. I was so frustrated my first 6 years, I came very close to almost asking to be traded.
Tom Yawkey was quoted as saying that if he couldn't get a ballpark in Newton, that he might move the team. They were threatening to move the Red Sox out of town and leave them with no team.
A lot of Their ownership, decisions, and practices had been frowned upon by many people in baseball and many people in the community and many people who were proactive in civil rights and another like really deep kind of stuff that I certainly didn't know when I was 7.
Mind you, when I came to the minor league system for the Red Sox, there were 6 African-American players, and 3 of us played the same position.
The Red Sox had been the last franchise in baseball to integrate. And ownership imparted a notorious country club atmosphere that trickled down to baseball operations.
Tom Yawkey basically had 2 rules. His general manager and his manager both had to be drinking buddies of his.
Billy Herman, Billy Georges, Pinky Higgins, all these loser, alcoholic coaches, this chorus line of drunks that managed the Red Sox.
And that's what he had until Dick O'Connell became general manager. And Dick O'Connell, in a bold move, hired this relative unknown, Dick Williams.
Being here is quite a pleasure, I'll tell you. I've had 2 years' experience managing. I consider this quite a challenge. The only thing I can tell you right now, I'll guarantee you we'll have a Husband Ball Club.
Dick Williams was the perfect manager for that team and that organization at that time. There was a lackadaisical way about running the organization that as soon as Dick Williams arrived, he did change it right away.
We're going to work on fundamentals. We're going to get the bunts down. We're going to hit the cutoff men.
He had us playing volleyball and things of that nature, and I'm saying to myself, what does this have to do with baseball?
Dick, will you make a prediction for the 1967 Red Sox?
I honestly think we'll win more ball games than we lose.
Dad said in spring training they were going to win more than they would lose. Well, this is from a team that finished near the cellar 2 years in a row and wasn't drawing 1 million people.
We were all excited about that because we were used to winning more than we lost here in Boston.
The culture might have changed under Williams, and the roster might have been filled with potential, but nobody else was buying in. Vegas even had the Sox as 100-1 underdogs to win the pennant in 1967. Though just 3 games into the season, the surprises started coming.
I turned on the game one night, and there was this kid named Billy Rohr who was throwing a no-hitter. I mean, he was just a kid.
Yaz made one of the greatest catches I've ever seen.
Rohr winds. Here it comes. Fly ball to deep left. Yastrzemski is going hard. Way back, way back. And he dives and makes a prodigious catch. Everybody in Yankee Stadium on their feet roaring as Yastrzemski went back and came down with that ball.
I played a shallow left field, even in Yankee Stadium. When I went back, I didn't think I had a chance. I just dove. And as I was coming down, I caught the ball over my shoulder.
One of the greatest catches you've ever seen by Yastrzemski in left field.
When I made the catch in left field, I thought he was going to have that no-hitter.
And then Elston Howard got a cheapy little single.
And the no-hit try is broken up.
Threw one hitter, and you beat the Yankees in Yankee Stadium. It's pretty good for your first start.
And the Red Sox bench unloads as they come out to greet Billy Rohr.
After the Rohr game, you got that sense that there was a buzz that something was happening with the Red Sox. You know, what they call Red Sox Nation up here. I was in college, Gannett Hall, University of Maine, going down to the dorm TV room, April, May, and all at once, the lounge downstairs started to fill up with kids because the Red Sox had a team. It was like a change from a team that didn't matter to one that really did matter.
And when by June of 1967, the Red Sox were still over 500, all over New England, fans couldn't help but notice.
You could sense this sleeping giant of Red Sox baseball finally awakened.
At first, I thought it might be an accident, but I think it's a building job. I think they've got a lot of depth.
I was in junior high school. I always had hope, but we had no basis to believe it. We never even thought about 500.
I think the Red Sox doing good this year, and I thought they were going to come in last place this year. I think Yastrzemski's carrying the club this year.
He was absolutely unbelievable.
You didn't want to miss his at-bat. Every time he came to the plate, you felt something special was going to happen.
And it is gone for a home run.
Carl Yastrzemski had won a batting title and made 3 All-Star teams in his first 6 years in Boston. But in the winter of '67, Yaz did something different to prep for the season, working with a Hungarian-born fitness guru named Gene Birdie.
He was a very tough disciplinarian. I can remember the first thing he said to me. He says, "You're not in too good a shape."
He make about half minute, and he was groggy.
So what did you say to him?
I said, "I am surprised. You are a big athlete. You know what you are? You are nobody in Hungary."
He'd have me do exercise in the steam room, and he'd peek through the window to make sure I was doing it. When I arrived at spring training, I could see the difference right away when I swung the bat the first few days in batting practice. That's when I decided that I was going to pull the ball more and try to hit home runs.
Drive to right field deep. It is in there for a home run, and Yastrzemski in the 9th inning has tied it up.
By the start of June, the plan was working. Yaz already had 10 home runs, well on his way to an incredible season.
There's a long one to left. Morton going over, and it's in the screen for a home run.
Everyone in Boston knew Yaz was better than ever. But in Chicago, there was someone who wasn't impressed. White Sox manager Eddie Stanky.
Eddie Stanky said Yaz is an all-star from the neck down. Whoa, what? Come on, Eddie.
I said he's not going to bother me.
When Boston and Chicago met in a June doubleheader, Yaz responded to Stanky with 6 hits, including a home run.
That was motivation, and it bonded the team without a doubt that someone was disrespecting how hard he was working.
Another indelible moment, a moment that showed Yaz and the Sox wouldn't back down to anyone, came on June 21st on a hot night in the Bronx.
That Yankee Stadium fight, that was something.
The Yankees versus the Boston Red Sox from Yankee Stadium.
The night before, Joe Foyt hit a grand slam home run to win the ballgame.
Thad Tillotson took umbrage at that, and he hit Foy.
Joe Foy.
The ball that hit Foy in the top of the helmet went to the screen.
And of course, Jim Lonborg was pitching, and Gentleman Jim didn't ever hesitate to brush somebody back.
Tillotson comes to the plate, and everybody on our team knows what's going to happen.
Ooh. Tillotson will go to first.
So I hit Tillotson, and Tillotson's walking down to first base, and he's yelling at me.
And he and Lonborg are exchanging words now.
He's pointing to me, he's pointing to home plate, says, "You got to hit too," and said, "I don't care, I don't have a problem with that."
Some of the Yankees are starting to come out of the dugout, just a step or so.
Rico Petrocelli and Joe Pepitone, who went to rival high schools in New York, looked at each other, and one guy said, "What? What are you looking at?"
Petrocelli hollering over at Pepitone.
Holy jeez, and then boom, it started.
And it's getting hot. There goes Pepitone as they go to him here at Yankee Stadium. Out of the bullpens, they're coming now. Both bullpens out.
And all of a sudden you hear a voice. "Where's my brother?" My brother was a security guard at the stadium. He came out in the field.
And they're trying to restore order.
"Where's my brother? Where's my brother?" "Pepitone. Where's my brother?" Pepitone says, "I didn't touch him. I didn't touch him."
It eventually broke up, but one of the things that it did for us, and knowing that, hey, we had someone that had our backs and would protect us.
That protector was Jim Lonborg. He was 25 years old in 1967, a Stanford graduate coming of age in more ways than one.
The name Gentleman Jim didn't seem to quite fit the tenacity which he had when he stepped out on that mound.
Gave him a shave on that one.
He began owning the plate himself. You know, that slice of the plate for right-handed batters, that belongs to me, not you. And he started knocking guys down.
Now this one plunked him right on the arm.
Well, Lonborg would throw at anyone. I can remember a game in Chicago in '67. Eddie Stanky stopped the game, brought in of all people, Wilbur Wood. to throw at me 4 times. Of course, Wolper didn't throw hard. He was a knuckleball pitcher. And after that game was over, Lonborg came up to me in between games.
I think I just said to Carl, well, who do you want me to get?
And I said, get Gary Peters. And he went out, and Gary came up and he drilled him, and knowing that when he came to bat, Gary Peters was going to hit him. That's how tough Lonborg was.
Lonborg's great pitching and Yastrzemski's spectacular play had the Red Sox, to the surprise of everyone, still in contention in mid-July. Then, after the All-Star break, they rattled off 4 straight wins at home before heading out on the road.
If we have a halfway decent road trip and come back, anything can happen yet.
As they take it 6-4, they've now won 6 straight.
During that streak, I could just remember myself coming in feeling good. You know, we're going to win the game.
Line drive toward Thomas. He's got it, and the Red Sox do it again.
The Sox won all 6 of their games on the road to make it 10 straight overall, jumping into second place, just half a game out of first.
They continue to run hot in this American League pennant race.
After that road trip, it's the first time in a '67 season that I thought we had a chance.
When the club came home from that road trip, it was like everything had suddenly changed in Boston.
We're flying in that night from Cleveland, and the pilot says we're going to have to detour our landing area because there's too many people out there.
Being on the plane and looking out the windows and seeing thousands of people there that were so excited.
Once we came out, there was people cheering us and patting us on the back. Fathers had little kids. This was 12 o'clock at night, had kids on their shoulders. There's the guys. Oh, man, alive. It was fabulous.
That gave us an extra lift. I think that road trip brought baseball back to Boston.
You've got to be excited about them. Have they surprised you?
I would have to say that they've surprised a little bit, but from here on out, it ain't going to be no surprise to me because, I mean, I don't see anybody any better. I think that's the way they should feel.
Ted Williams was an icon in Boston, but in 1967, even he seemed to understand that these Red Sox had captured the imagination of the city, and all of New England, really, like no other club before them, with their games becoming the soundtrack of the summer.
You could walk down the street of the town that I grew up in and never miss a pitch, because the radios on summer afternoons and summer evenings on windowsills carrying the Red Sox game.
And the Red Sox take the field with the roar of this great crowd.
The lobstermen, they might 1 out of 3 boats might have a radio, but they'd be like yelling the scores back and forth.
And the Red Sox take a 3-2 lead.
And if you were driving around, you could follow the game by all the transistor radios in the cars next to you at the stoplight.
There were reports that cars would pull over outside the Callahan Tunnel entrance.
There's one particular specific that they talk about. Yeah, the guy said, I'm sorry, Yaz is up, the bases are loaded, I'm not going in that tunnel.
The Red Sox have loaded the bases, and who's up? Yaz.
When Yaz would come to bat, and I don't care what it was, my mother would lean out the window, yell that Yaz is up, and we would all scurry over to the window, which was open. She would put the transistor radio, and we'd listen to the at-bat. We did that all summer long.
For me, it was sitting in the breezeway with my grandfather, who smoked this big cigar. We'd sit there, listen to games. I'd go out in the backyard, and I'd make believe that the backyard was Fenway Park. And I'd be playing that Red Sox game all over again by myself.
There were a lot of heroes in the Sox lineup, but none had a place in the hearts of fans quite like a 22-year-old slugger named Tony Conigliaro, who'd been a sensation ever since making his debut in 1964 as a teenager.
There's a drive by Conigliaro, and it is out of here. What a bomb he had.
Better still, Tony C. was a local kid from Swampscott, Mass., which made him all the more irresistible to fans.
You take a lot of pride when you see your local athletes become successful. And being from the North Shore area and being an Italian, it meant a lot to us.
High fly ball to left field. Into the netting for a home run.
Tony was a good-looking guy and cool.
Tony was cocky, but it was a kind of cockiness that exuded confidence.
I'd like to be better than Ted Williams. I feel that once I get going, I can probably be a better all-around player.
Could sing, could dance. I mean, he was a total package. He was the real deal.
Tony was a big part of the fairy tale in the summer of '67, until the night of August 18th at Fenway, when he stepped to the plate to face the Angels' Jack Hamilton.
I was on deck, you know, from the side. You could see the height of the ball, and as I was tracking it from Hamilton's hands, I was looking and saw that the ball was going head high. And I'm saying, get out of the way.
We're all afraid for him. It's like he almost lost the ball. He never moved. It hit him flush.
The most god-awful thing that I remember is the sound, the thud.
Boy, I'll never just forget the sound.
When I ran towards him, I said, oh my God. He was on the ground, he could see the pain, you know, and all of a sudden his face just started blowing up, like blowing a balloon up.
And the crowd went totally quiet. We thought he was dead.
And they called for a priest, and we heard that the priest gave him his last rites.
It was Tony. It was Tony. I mean, it was, of all people.
Conigliaro got hit on the 18th of August. August 19th was my birthday. I told my mother, who used to always get me this cherry-flavored cake from Scano's Bakery in Worcester, which was a real luxury for us as kids, that I didn't want a cake to celebrate my birthday till Tony C. was back in the lineup.
Conigliaro suffered a fractured cheekbone, a dislocated jaw, and damage to his retina. He never did come back that season.
When he got out of the hospital, he sat on the bench before the games, but there were times where he'd go in the clubhouse and he would just be sobbing because here we are fighting, you know, a team that's in a pennant race, and he wasn't able to be in it. And that really devastated him.
When Tony went down, the Sox were 3 games back, in 4th place in the tightly packed American League. And without the local kid in the middle of the lineup anymore, it looked like their odds had gotten a lot longer again.
When you see a player of that caliber go down, you'd think that he can't be replaced. I thought that's the end of chances for the pennant race.
When Tony C got hit, I think most people felt that the season was over. But Dick O'Connell, the Red Sox general manager, he went out and got what they needed.
What the Red Sox needed in August of '67 was a new outfielder with some pop. Improbably, one was available. Ken Hawk Harrelson, who'd just been released from the Kansas City A's.
Phone rings. Hawk, this is Dick O'Connell of the Red Sox. He said, what's it going to take to get you up here in Boston? I said, $150,000. He says, you got it. If I'd have said $250,000, he'd have said, you got it.
O'Connell also traded for longtime Yankees catcher Elston Howard, who had experience with what the Sox were going through, a pennant race. In this case, a pennant race for the ages.
An entire nation is caught up in the excitement of the most dramatic race in American League history. 4 teams were still in it: Boston, Minnesota, Detroit, and the White Sox.
You know, at that time, if you won the pennant, you go to the World Series, and there weren't playoffs yet.
And that's part of this magic, is that it was 1 out of 10. It wasn't 5 out of 15.
It was a real pennant race.
People forget that.
It was a real pennant race. It was a 14 race, one of the very few in the history of American League or National League ever, one of the handful of greatest pennant races ever. In a real pennant race, people have to understand, you win the pennant or you go home.
Ground ball to Petrocelli, hits slowly, throws to second for 1, back to first. Out for a double play, and the Red Sox end it.
Many of the games, 8th, 9th inning, tie score, you don't know what's going to happen. They'd pull it out.
All the late inning drama only increased the fans' love for the team they called the Cardiac Kids. As for the players themselves, the close calls just increased their confidence, with the race staying tight as summer got set to turn to fall.
Felt like we could win at any point in the game, especially late. So 7th, 8th innings, 9th innings, we weren't despondent. We knew that there was somebody going to come up and have a special play.
And never was that more evident than on August 27th in Chicago. The Red Sox were ahead by 1 in the bottom of the 9th with 1 out.
The batter is Dwayne Josephson.
That is correct.
And Ken Berry is the runner, tagging up from third.
There's a drive into right field.
It was a short fly ball. It wasn't very deep. And of course, Jose was not known for his strong arm.
Caught by Tartabull.
Jose Tartabull can throw 150 feet.
Runner tags. Here's the throw home, and he is out at the plate. He is out at home, and the Boston Red Sox have won it.
It showed that some player, different player, every day did something for that team to help it win.
By the final week of the season, just a game and a half separated the 4 teams at the top of the AL, and the drama would be at its highest in Fenway, where the Sox finished the season with a 2-game series against the first-place Twins.
We have here today some 125 newspapermen from all over the country. This is the point of no return for Boston. If they do not win today, there's no tomorrow.
We knew we had to win both of them to have any chance. Of course, we were going against an outstanding pitcher in Jim Cott.
The Red Sox didn't have very good teams. In the 60s, we had great teams with the Twins, so we all felt very confident going into Saturday.
I was in the St. Anthony Hall. I was in my fraternity house. And as much fun as it was, I really did not believe that they would beat Jim Cott.
The Red Sox and the Twins prepare to go to it in this very big ball game.
And in the early going, Cott was indeed dominant.
Saturday, we're losing. Jim Cott's pitching one of the best games we've ever had, pitched against us.
Got him with a curveball. Foul tipped into the mid. Strike 3. That is the 4th strikeout.
But in the 3rd, improbably, or maybe, yes, impossibly, fate turned the Sox way again.
He throws that great curveball he has, and I heard a pop when he threw it. And I said to myself, he popped his elbow.
And Cott is going to take a couple of warm-up throws, which would indicate that maybe something's bothering Jim.
Oh, I remember like it was yesterday. I threw the pitch, felt the vibration in my elbow, shook it off, said, well, it'll be okay.
Yes, it appears that something has gone wrong. He may have hurt himself on one of his pitches.
It was like my arm was limp, and at that point they noticed something from the dugout, and I had to come out of the game.
Something has come up to bother Jim Cott, and it looks like it's his elbow.
When he came out of the ball game, he said, wow, you know, maybe this is the best thing for us.
If Jim Cott doesn't get hurt in that first game on Saturday, none of this happens. We're not sitting here today talking about this thing, because the Twins would have won that game, and that would have been it.
You're so right. You talk to Red Sox players, they will tell you Jim Cott was beating us that day.
With Cott out of the game, Boston took a 3-2 lead into the 7th. And then looked to put the game away when they had runners on with the perfect hitter coming up.
And Carl Yastrzemski is up.
Yaz had been hotter than ever down the stretch, slugging over 700 since the start of September, and was on the cusp of winning the AL Triple Crown.
They continued to pitch to him in clutch situations, even when they didn't have to, and saying, well, he's not going to hit another home run.
I never talked with Carl about it. I talked with other guys about it. And I used to, bleep, could they pitch to him?
Deep to right field. Number 44.
You'd have to wonder, do the other clubs not have scouts? Did they not have any eye contact with the games that they were watching? You could not pitch to this guy.
I can remember just saying to myself, just get the head of the bat out. The wind was blowing out, and see what happens.
This one came in a clutch situation to give Boston a 6-2 edge here in the 7th.
I've never seen an athlete do as much for his team as Carl Yastrzemski did in the last 5 to 6 weeks of the 1967 season. Never seen it.
Any personal goal which I have
Don't get me wrong, I want to win the Triple Crown, I want to win the batting title, but that comes second. The pennant is first, and we stayed in the pennant race.
Line drive to Adair, and that's all. And the Red Sox have beaten the Minnesota Twins, a victory that they had to have.
It was like it was meant to be almost that Saturday. And after the game was over, there wasn't any doubt in my mind that we were going to win on Sunday.
Coming into that last game, what a race.
3 teams on the last day.
Yeah.
On the last day of the season.
Last day of the season.
I don't think I slept the night before
Yeah,
at all.
it was,
I didn't get a, it just, you just couldn't.
Yeah, this was really an exciting place to be. I tell you, the fans were just, they were going wild.
The fans had gotten so engaged with the impossible dream theme.
That's right.
And it really was an impossible dream. 101 shots, and here we were, and you know, on this October 1st, playing for the, what turned out to be the pennant.
We watched it on our little TV. The kids in the neighborhood who did not have a TV were at our house. We all communally sat around and just hoped and prayed.
I can remember after we won on Saturday, Kenny Harrelson came up and he says, "Where are you staying tonight?" And I says, "You know, at my apartment." He says, "I don't think that's a good idea." He said, "I'm going to give you my room key. You had a better record while pitching on the road. He says, you're going to feel like you've got a road game." And so I stayed at the Sheraton Hotel that night and I walked to Fenway on Sunday morning and just felt that, you know, things were all set in place.
The last day of the 1967 regular season began with the Red Sox and Twins tied for first place, and the Tigers only a half game behind, with Detroit playing a second consecutive doubleheader. Back at Fenway, Minnesota struck first, taking a 2-0 lead into the bottom of the 6th.
It is another run for Minnesota.
The bottom of the 6th, I think that was it right there because Dean Chance was tough. He was always tough.
Always
on
tough.
us, you know?
Always
Had
tough.
Great
on
stuff. But I remember who started it off, Jim Lonborg. in that
Greg
bunt. Perfect bunt.
Tovar's at third, and I just give him a casual look down there, and I know he's back. And the first pitch Chance threw, it was a strike, and I was able to get it down.
Good bunt. And he can't play it.
I'm on first. And then Adair, next pitch, single. I'm on second, he's on first. Next pitch, Dalton Jones, single.
Swinging away, base hit to left. Lonborg being held at third base, and they're loaded up. Can you imagine a moment like this?
On 3 pitches, the Sox had loaded the bases with none out, and the man they called Yaz was coming up.
Having given the opportunity to come up with the bases loaded kind of took me off the hook. I slipped in left field and allowed a run to come in where it shouldn't have. And that was on my mind with the bases loaded. I said, you got a chance to make up for it now.
His entire life was right there in that moment because he had spent a summer leading the club to that point, to where they were right then. And you knew he wanted to be up, and you knew he was going to do something.
At no point in my life at that point, 21 years of age, and sports fan that I was, had I ever convinced myself more of anything and that Yaz was getting hit at that moment.
No doubt. He's going to get hit. There was no doubt on my mind.
Base hit to center. Lonborg scores. Adair will score. It's tied up.
It was the impossible dream coming to fruition. And Yaz was the dream maker.
They added 3 more runs in the 6th and took a 5-3 lead into the bottom of the 9th. A few moments later, the Red Sox were 1 out away from at least a share of the AL pennant.
Now we got to get right to that final out. Let's go over here and tell me what was going through your mind.
My claim to fame is this last out. I was playing Rich Rollins deep at shortstop. Lonborg threw him a great sinker inside. He gets jammed, and it's a short pop-up, and I'm saying, come on down. Please, don't miss this.
He didn't need a glove. Didn't need a glove.
The pitch is looped towards shortstop. Petrocelli's back. He's got it. The Red Sox win. There's pandemonium on the field.
They won. No, I couldn't believe they won. You know, nobody could believe it.
It was such an emotional scene at Fenway Park. I can remember running in and already fans surrounded Lonborg. They were all over.
I made the worst move by running into the mound, picking up Jim. We're hanging on for dear life, and we got to what we thought was a dugout, and we were down by the tarps. We misjudged. The police were trying to help us get back. I looked up at Jim. He had no shirt on. I'm going, oh, wait, this is good.
A friend of mine was in the pile. He still has a picture, I think, of him swatting at Jim Lonborg after they had won.
It was one of those moments I think that little league kids think about all the time when they become the guy that's carried off the field on somebody's shoulders.
They won, and they're celebrating on the field and carrying off Jim Lonborg, but yet we still had to wait for the Angels and the Tigers.
In Detroit, the Tigers won the first game of the doubleheader over the Angels. But if they lost the second, Boston would win the pennant and head to the World Series. With the Tigers trailing in the ninth, the Sox were still in the Fenway clubhouse awaiting the outcome, only able to follow the action in one way.
We just had a little old radio sitting there on a table. It was a very cool scene.
It was the big radio. It was guys with cigars and cans of beer in their hand, athletes, Red Sox players not knowing how happy to get because it wasn't over for them.
While they're in the clubhouse, famously listening to the Tiger game, I'm riding home on the Brighton Avenue T, and there's nothing but transistor radios. Everybody's listening to the game.
We're listening, and all of a sudden, Dick McAuliffe comes to the plate. McAuliffe hits into a double play. Ball game is over. Only double play he hit into all year long. I see Mr. Yawkey grab Carl and just hug him, just like he was his son.
What can I say? What 7 for 8 in the final 2 biggest games of your life? You're too much.
I was just trying best I could, Don, and but I just feel great. Just great.
Rico, you look like you feel pretty good.
Oh, I feel great right now. I tell you, it's the greatest thrill I've ever had.
Ellie, you've had this happen to you before.
We just all lost our breath for a minute, feeling like this can't have just happened. It was a miracle.
Because of what it took to win that pennant, I don't want to say the World Series was anticlimactic, but it didn't seem to me like it was a life or death situation.
Just doing what they did to get to the World Series was something we hadn't seen. I hadn't seen in my lifetime. It was great for me, you know, and if they lost World Series, okay, you know, no tears.
It was a great World Series. They were down 3-1. They came back. Lonborg, 1-hitter in the second game, 3-hitter in the 5th game, was transcendent.
The amazing Lonborg has done it again.
We pushed it to Game 7, and I think that everybody knew in their hearts that Lonnie couldn't do it again.
Lonnie started with 2 days rest, and you can't say, well, I wish he had 4 days rest. It just worked out that way.
No one was going to beat Bob Gibson. Looking back on it, no one was going to beat Bob Gibson.
The Cardinals win. They're the new world champions.
It was just meant to be. It was anticlimactic for us to be in the World Series, but we still felt like it was just one hell of a year.
If we had have won the World Series that year, we would have been like any other team. But as it was, we were the team that lived the impossible dream. The only thing that mattered was that we beat the odds, and that made us all feel great.
It doesn't diminish one bit that they didn't win from the experience that everyone, you, me, and all that, everyone went through in '67.
It really wasn't about winning in '67. It was about the idea of winning, the idea that it wasn't impossible, and the experience in so many different ways that millions of New Englanders had being a part of it. And not just watching the games, but singing along to the team's unofficial record.
I was born in '73, but I remember in the late '70s and the '80s going to my elementary school library, and one of everyone's favorite things to do was to flip through the record collection and find The Impossible Dream.
My parents still have it at home, and they have it up on the wall as only like New England families could have, like with two-sided tape. You know what I mean? It's kind of stuck to the wall.
Well, it was corny as hell. Okay, if you were a young person and you were into the Byrds and Jefferson Airplane, you know, we just kind of like, oh, God.
You could have the Beatles, you could have the Beach Boys, you could have the Rolling Stones, New to America. This is what we're listening to. Carl Yastrzemski.
Carl Yastrzemski.
Carl Yastrzemski.
The man we call Yaz. We love you.
And the truth was that in the season that fans fell in love with a Red Sox team in a different way than ever before, there was one iconic name that stood out above all the others. Because Yaz didn't just win the Triple Crown in '67. He became a legend forever.
He might be the only player ever to have a Triple Crown year, and it was, the stats underrated what he did for the team.
No player has done more to win his team a championship than Yaz did to win the American League pennant in 1967. You know, offense, defense, leadership, clutch, the 7 for 8, the last 2 games of the season.
That was the coming out of Yaz, and of course, everything exploded after they won.
Everybody's buying loaves of big Yaz bread the following year. Yaz got the Sports Illustrated Man of the Year in December. To see the Red Sox on the cover of all these magazines, all of a sudden they were kind of national, and they had never been national. They had just been local losers.
Somehow, 50 years have now passed. 50 years since what we can now see as the season that changed everything, forever. After '67, in an always packed Fenway, there would be more magical years, of course, filled with a unique blend of joy and agony that came to define something called Red Sox Nation. But if you know the story of any of those years, of any of those teams, what you also have to know is the only reason they mattered so much was because '67 happened first. Because Yaz, Gentleman Jim, Tony C., Rico, and the rest all came together for something that at the time was unimaginable. Because the impossible dream was born.
But I can never forget '67, because that was part of my childhood. That was part of me growing up as a New Englander.
I know for me, if I look at the paper and the box score, I look at the Red Sox first, always have, and I always will, because of 1967.
When I think of '67, I'm smiling inside and out. It just reminds me of fulfillment of youth. Finally, something good happened. All my passion of sports, a team rewarded all that passion.
People still come up and talk to us about what a wonderful experience 1967 was and what it meant to them. It's something we have to take to us to our graves, that amazing feeling of being a part of making this all possible.
I don't think anyone will forget that '67 season. That's what changed everything for the Red Sox. We became winners.
You had these young guys take one team in one region of the country, New England, and transform it into baseball heaven. That's when Red Sox Nation